Good morning and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, From Complexity to Clarity, Modern Finance Delivered Faster with OneStream CPM Express, hosted by Futuresense and OneStream. We're delighted to have you with us as we explore how finance teams can modernize consolidation, reporting and planning faster than ever before, while laying the foundation for future growth and scalability. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping notes. Today's session is being recorded. We do encourage you to submit questions through the webinar using the chat function, and we'll take the questions at the end of the webinar. If we don't have time to cover your question, please leave it in the chat and a member of our team will follow up with you at a later set time. We hope you leave today's webinar with practical insights into how organizations can accelerate their finance transformation journey and achieve a faster time to value with OneStream CPM Express. We're fortunate to have some experienced speakers joining us today. First, you'll hear from Simon Jackson, who's the Managing Director at Futuresense, and he will discuss the key finance and reporting challenges driving organizations to modernize their EPM landscape. He'll be followed by JP Stradom, who's a Senior Solution Consultant at OneStream, and he will take us through a live demonstration, bringing the concepts to life and showing how CPM Express helps organizations move quickly from strategy to execution. And finally, Brian Butler, who's a Director and an EPM Business Consultant at Futuresense, will walk you through the implementation journey, outlining what clients can expect and how organizations can successfully achieve a CPM Express deployment. And then myself, Nicole Astvalk, I will be your host for this webinar, and I'm an Associate Director for Sales and Marketing at Futuresense. Thank you once again for joining us. Simon, over to you.
Thank you, Nicole. Good day, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today. I thought I'd begin with a little stat. It's something we frequently encounter in practice too, and that is that finance teams can spend up to 70 or 80% of their time gathering and validating data, and really leaving only a fraction of their effort focused on analysis and decision support. One of the common themes we're seeing across finance organizations today is that business growth or even data growth is often outpacing finance transformation. Companies are becoming larger, more complex, and more demands from a reporting and planning perspective. Yet many finance teams are still relying on things like spreadsheets or highly manual processes, maybe some legacy EPM tools that were implemented years ago, or a collection of disconnected or fragmented systems supporting different parts of the finance function. Over time, finance processes often become spread across multiple applications, databases, reporting tools, and this creates fragmented data, duplicated effort, and limited visibility across the organization or into the organization. The result is we notice this growing gap between what business expects from finance and what the current systems and processes can efficiently deliver. The challenge growing businesses encounter is that finance complexity grows with the business. As organizations scale, finance complexity increases exponentially. You may have more legal entities, more currencies, more business units, more stakeholders, more regulatory requirements, more demand for forecasting and scenario planning. And what worked when the organization was less complex often becomes difficult to sustain. Finance teams start spending more time collecting, validating, and reconciling data than analyzing it. And when information is spread across these spreadsheets or multiple systems, the challenge becomes even greater. So just to talk about the spreadsheet challenge in a little bit more depth, and we can't easily diss Excel entirely. It does remain a powerful tool in finance. The challenge is that many organizations are using Excel as a system rather than as a tool. In many cases, critical finance processes are spread across these multiple disconnected applications, databases, reporting tools, each managing a different part of the process. So budgets are maintained across multiple spreadsheets. Forecasts are maybe consolidated manually. Data needs to be extracted, transformed, and reconciled between systems. Intercompany eliminations require significant effort, and reporting packs involve extensive manipulation and validation. Eventually, finance becomes dependent on like a handful of key individuals who understand how all the spreadsheet systems and data flows fit together. And at that point, the risk isn't necessarily the spreadsheet or the fragmented system itself. It's that these critical business processes depend on manual effort, fragmented data, and institutional knowledge in those individuals. You may find in your business that maybe Excel isn't the issue so much, and it's that you're running on an old EPM platform that was implemented many years ago. These systems, they may still function, but often they are expensive to maintain, they're difficult to enhance, they're resource intensive to support, and they may be limited in their planning and reporting capabilities, and basically unable to deliver the agility the business now expects. So finance teams find themselves constrained by these systems that were originally intended to enable them. At the same time, there's growing expectations on finance. Leadership teams want faster close cycles, more accurate forecasts, better scenario modeling, improved visibility across the organization, more timely insights. They don't just want to know what happened in the past. They want finance to help predict what happens next. Finance is increasingly expected to be a strategic partner to the business, as I'm sure you've heard before. But that's difficult when significant effort is still being spent collecting, reconciling, and validating data across multiple sources. Most organizations do, however, recognize these challenges, not necessarily new to any of you. They're often quite obvious, but I'm sure many of you see some of these realities within your own business today. And the question isn't really whether change is needed. The question is how to achieve it. Historically, implementing a modern enterprise EPM platform could be a major undertaking. It's long project timelines, significant consulting effort potentially, extensive design workshops, and large internal resource commitments. And for many organizations, the perceived implementation journey actually becomes a barrier to taking the first step. And that's where CPMX comes into the conversation. CPMX, powered by OneStream, becomes particularly compelling because instead of starting from scratch, organizations start with a proven framework built around leading practices. Included in it are core financial processes such as financial consolidation and close, budgeting, forecasting and planning, reporting analysis, and quite a bit more, which the team will take you through, JP and Brian. And because this is pre-built, the implementation journey is accelerated. There's pre-built functionality, implementation templates, and proven process design included within CPMX. So importantly, CPMX helps organizations move away from fragmented finance processes and towards a unified platform where data, process, and reporting can coexist within a single controlled environment. This significantly reduces implementation effort while still providing the benefits of a modern enterprise-grade EPM platform. So what does this actually mean for finance? The real value is not in simply implementing another system. It's helping finance teams fundamentally change how they spend their time. From gathering data, moving to analyzing performance. from reconciling information across multiple systems to working from a single source of truth. From managing spreadsheets and manual processes to actually driving decisions in the business. From maintaining complexity to operating through a controlled, scalable finance process. So CPMX really does enable this. And importantly, it provides a practical pathway for organizations to move into truly enterprise-level finance capabilities without the traditional complexity often associated with large transformation programs. In closing, the organizations gaining the greatest advantage today are not necessarily those with the largest finance teams. They're the organizations that are giving their finance teams the right tools, processes, and information to operate effectively at scale. So for companies that have outgrown spreadsheets or are constrained by legacy EPM platforms, or are just struggling with finance processes that are spread across multiple disconnected systems, CPMX certainly provides a faster, lower risk route to modernizing finance. And as an implementation partner in Futuresense, our role is really to help guide your journey, bringing together technology, leading practices, and practical implementation experience to ensure organizations realize value quickly and establish a foundation that can support their next stage of growth. So thank you very much for your time today, and I look forward to today's discussion and to you all getting your first glance at CPMX. I will now hand over to JP, and he's going to introduce OneStream to you as a technology and also dive into what CPMX means and what it includes. Thanks, JP.
Thank you, Simon. Yeah, today I'm going to briefly take you through why and how OneStream can take you from that complexity to clarity, and why OneStream is uniquely positioned in the market to address those challenges as Simon has discussed, and add value by creating efficiency and effectiveness into your processes and reducing your total cost of ownership and de-risking your financial processes and data. I'll then briefly introduce you to the CPM Express solution via a brief demonstration before handing over to Brian, who will take us through a practical and real-life example of how the implementation of CPM Express has facilitated that time to value at a customer. So just to position OneStream as an entire platform, it's important to keep in mind that CPM Express is really the starting point with pre-built configuration, but it is still housed on the OneStream platform. So ultimately, you do still have access to the full suite of capability within OneStream, but ultimately utilizing that pre-configuration to get your time to value. To just take you through the OneStream's vision quite quickly, if we discuss the three pillars of OneStream, I'm going to start with our CPM financial management solutions. So OneStream is uniquely again positioned to really unify those close and consolidation processes, but also facilitate those pre-month-end close processes. As an example, account reconciliation or transaction matching. That really, again, facilitates that close process that you're ultimately trying to achieve. You also have planning and budgeting directly within the solution. So that's unified with your actuals. So you're able to do variance analysis and perform those type of actions, with reporting built directly within the platform as well, ultimately giving you the ability to drive the decisions based off the data that's within the platform. Supporting those financial management processes is operational planning and analytics. The best way to think of this is that operational type data that drives the processes within your business. A quick example might be an ESG process that might be utilizing a lot more operational based data, or maybe sales performance management or demand planning, or maybe even something like workforce planning at a much more granular level. Another thing to keep in mind is that the solution or OneStream environment is again uniquely powered by the OneStream solutions, AI-powered solutions. These being agents, studio items, as well And then again, processes built directly into the workflows as well. You are able to extend on your initial investment. So as the future phases come about, you'll be able to enhance your application with those said processes. Just diving directly into CPM Express, to keep in mind here is that this has been built directly off our plug-and-play Genesis architecture. So what this implies as well is that you have a user interface where you can configure and build ultimately the processes that make sense to your set processes that you're busy performing, utilizing those pre-configured artifacts that CPM Express brings. So moving into CPM Express itself, to just give you an idea of what that's about, it is those packages that are predefined. So it's predefined configurations, based off proven deliveries on all our customers that have, ultimately utilized the OneStream platform to enhance their time to value, adoption, and scalability. So you would have your foundational elements, as mentioned before on my initial slide. So powering those productionalized solutions are essentially the platform, the foundation of OneStream. So the ability to do financial close and consolidation, do your financial reporting, your operational and financial planning, as well as supporting those AI type activities that you may be considering as well within your finance application. So the productionalized solutions is what CPM Express brings, and then that will be deployed ultimately based on the deployment methodologies that you would work with Futuresense to essentially get to your time to value as well. So based on the Genesis user interface, as mentioned before, you've got full scope, so your financial close and consolidation, your financial planning and analysis, and again, you are ultimately able to extend on that investment by downloading and implementing more solutions available on our solution exchange as well. As an example, workforce planning or transaction matching as discussed before. Pre-configured into the solution is metadata, so IFRS 18 compliant. There are calculations specifically built in for consolidation. You have reporting, so pre-built reports already included. You have training material, as well as some documentation that will support the project management of your solution. Just going to dive into, I'm going to build the slide out a little bit, but just diving into the actual artifacts that are pre-configured within CPM Express. So those are those items that are there to essentially speed up your financial presentation and disclosure. It's important to keep in mind that this is both management, i.e. GAAP compliant, as well as IFRS 18 compliant. So you do have IFRS 18 structures predefined that you can then go and extend on at any point in time based on your own unique requirements as well. There are forms, i.e. what we would term data capture forms that can be used for reporting, as well as getting data into the solution. That's supporting those disclosure-based requirements, but also going further, as an example, allowing you to do some tax-proof collection of data, or maybe doing your adjustments, whether pre or post your consolidation, and other items to facilitate activities, for instance, your allocation process. You have reports, again, that are pre-configured, and Brian will show us a bunch of those when he gets into his part of the demonstration today. Now, it's important to keep in mind as well that, once you've loaded your trial balance and you've completed a lot of your note-based information, your disclosure that this validates, and those validations and confirmations are applicable. So again, built into CPM Express are multiple validation rules, allowing you to essentially trust the data that's now being captured. You also have reporting around the journals, the data input capabilities, commentary. Ultimately, every activity, every data adjustment that happens within the OneStream environment is essentially audited. So you'll be able to track and trace all activities happening within the solution. And then just to close out on this slide, planning and forecasting, that whole FP&A process is capable, or you are enabled to get started on that as well. What CPM Express brings to you is already a planning framework with predefined planning and budgeting based methods, i.e. driver-based budgeting as an example, what-if modeling, and again, you can go and extend on those solutions, based off our marketplace, or off our solution exchange as well. Just diving a little bit deeper into some of those artifacts. So we mentioned, to address your consolidation requirements, there are calculations and translation-based logic already incorporated into the application. So items like rolling forward of data, error checks around, whether your notes are equaling what you captured on your balance sheet or your income statement. You've got movement schedules as well. So again, the ability to do FCTR type calculations. There's methods built into the solution as well, which again can be extended based on your unique needs. So as an example, all your consolidation eliminations, whether it be equity method, whether it be a proportional integration, i.e. joint ventures, or a full consolidation, or maybe your minority interest-based calculations as well are all included. You have a flat consolidation structure, but you're also able to do multiple subgroup consolidations as well within the solution. Also addressing things like mergers and acquisitions, your disposals, and maybe something along the lines of IFRS 5, those discontinued activity type logic. A little bit further, there's many artifacts as discussed. So, again, just around consolidation logic and eliminations. Again, I'll just focus on an item like that elimination of those intercompany profit type calculations. That logic is incorporated within the solution. Now, moving into the planning framework, as mentioned before, you are able to go and create methods, you are able to utilize the existing methods that are already incorporated in CPM Express, but you are able to go and extend on those methods by creating your own budgeting planning based methodologies as well within the solution, defining your own models, assigning those methods, and ultimately calculating your various plans. You're then able to do scenario modeling, what if type calculations against that, and then go and measure that against your actuals via the reporting capability as well. So looking at the planning framework quite briefly, it brings all those planning activities across your organization together, whether it be by a department or cost center type budgeting activity, it is then modeled, consolidated up, utilizing the same logic that would be applicable for your actuals. So you're able to then go and perform that variance analysis across your various scenarios and processes as required within your solution. Now, before I move into the demo itself, I'm just going to highlight one additional item here, being the Workforce Planning Express solution included as well. This is a nice example of where you can, on a line-for-line basis, go and model individual people-based workforce planning requirements. Another example using this capability would be CapEx-based planning at a fixed asset level, an individual fixed asset level rather. And another example could be something like project planning as well. So all those operational-based planning requirements, again, incorporated directly within the platform alongside your financial planning requirements as well. So I'm going to move over into my demo application. There we go. We should be seeing now my demo application. Now, keep in mind, this is just my demo application. We are utilizing as I mentioned before, what we call Genesis. This is our ability to go and create those very unique user interfaces that users are using now to guide them through their various processes as well. So we've used that capability to set up CPM Express. ultimately giving us a nice window into our various processes. As an example, consolidation, budgeting, forecasting, and maybe some flash-based activities. Supporting the financial processes are all our metrics. So again, in this scenario here, is we've used operational data to go and support those financial-based decision-making processes that we've got as well. I'm just going to highlight a couple of buttons on my screen here before I move into them. We would have direct line of sight as an end user or a manager, or maybe as the administrator, into the various workflows that are being utilized. I might want to have a nice oversight. So using a solution from our solution exchange, being task manager, to provide full line of sight across all the activities and processes that are being performed within the application itself. We have our reporting, which I'll get into, and then of course, account reconciliation. So those pre-close activities, again, being included directly within the application as well. So starting off with consolidation, I'll just briefly touch on this. What you'll notice is it's directed me straight into a workflow. So as an example, I'm responsible for this entity. I'm working in my actual scenario for a specific time period. The previous periods have all been locked down. I have imported the data that's relevant to me. I've gone and mapped and validated that data within the OneStream environment. I've processed that, essentially initiating those consolidation-based requirements, i.e. intercompany eliminations, or maybe your currency translations as well. And then just finally on the screen here, I'm showing you some confirmation rules. So as an example, I'm doing a test to make sure that my income statement and my balance sheet is all in balance. So in this example here, we can see our balance sheet is slightly out of balance. Now, from this instance, I'd be able to navigate back to my starting point to go and understand why that is happening within the process. I would then do some capturing of data via my input forms. So as an example, I'm moving into my process activities, then my input forms. Now, the list on screen here is what's applicable to me as an end user, but keep in mind that during your year-end process, as an example, you may be responsible for many note captures. Now, those forms are what's predefined, as mentioned, as part of the artifacts that you get with CPM Express. As an end user, I would select what's applicable to me and go and capture that information. And then again, those built-in validations to ensure that, the note capture that we've done is equaling the balance sheet or income statement as required. Moving along in my workflow, I'm able to do journal adjustments and then maybe allocation-based requirements as well. So again, we have the ability to do multi-stage allocation, whether it be actual or whether it be budgeting-based requirements. Now I'm just going to move back to my home screen. And just to highlight again, embedded in the application and uniquely unified with my actuals is my budgeting process. So in this example over here, in my workflow, I've just navigated to a specific modeling screen where what I'll do is I'll just start on the screen that we're seeing here, where I might want to go and do a specific initiative in this example. So you'll see I'm running a new campaign. I've created a what if scenario, and I'm going to go and adjust the revenue by 5%. If I move into my impact review screen, what we'll notice here is I had my budget working version, but based on that requirement, based on that initiative that I've run, I'm now able to do that scenario modeling and what if analysis compared back to my budget working scenario. I'm also able to, if I go into my various configuration requirements, you'll notice I can create multiple different processes at this point. I can look at the global methods that might be applicable. So by entity or by region, by account, by maybe cost center, I'm able to go and utilize those pre-configured planning methods already built into the solution, and I can then add to that as an end user if required, if a different methodology may be applicable within my process. Now, as I move through the process, I would want to review it. So I'll give you an example of one of our planning forms where, I'm now looking at my budget, for all my different periods based off the planning methods that I previously set up, ultimately using my actuals as the starting point for my process. So to close off on my demonstration, I'll just move back to my home screen and I'll go into reporting. I'm going to choose a balance sheet. So again, multiple artifacts already included. I've selected my balance sheet statement. I'm looking at the current period. And now based off my item here, I'm going to choose my budget working. And depending on my scenario, my data will then appear as accordingly. Now I could go in, again, with my column set, look at different versions of that balance sheet, maybe comparing it to actuals, maybe doing my commentary analysis. So i.e. doing my actual explanation of the variances, via commentary, which we can then report upon as well. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Brian, who's going to do a little bit more detail in terms of the actuals process as well, and how CPM Express has really been used, to get that time to value in terms of an implementation at a customer. So I'll stop sharing at this point.
What CPM Express does well. CPM Express strengths, where the platform delivers. The following capabilities were consistently viewed positively throughout CPM Express implementations. The dashboarding and reporting experience. Rich professional dashboards that accelerate front-end delivery. Finance teams can engage with data on their terms. Well-designed forms and cube views. Input forms and cube views are intuitive and well-structured, reducing the learning curve for finance users and enabling faster adoption. I'll be going through quite a few of these in my demo a little bit later. Data validation, visibility, and reconciliation. Good visibility of validation results during data loading with BI blending. Users can see exactly what is happening, reducing reconciliation time and building confidence in the data. During our implementation, we found that this was a massive benefit and greatly reduced our time for development and time to go live. A professional user interface. A polished modern UI that creates a strong first impression and accelerates user buy-in, particularly important for executive-facing reporting. Reusable reporting components. There was significant value in reusable report templates and presentation components that reduce build time and ensure consistency across reporting outputs. We also found this a great benefit, as we didn't need to build these templates from the start. They were already there, and we just had to configure them slightly for our usage for the specific clients. And overall, a strong user experience. Taken together, the front-end capabilities deliver an end-to-end experience that finance teams consistently respond to positively. What this means in practice. The platform's user-facing strengths translate directly into measurable value for finance teams from day one. Faster time to insights. The finance teams see real results very quickly. Essentially, the professional UI, intuitive forms, and rich dashboards mean users are productive quickly. Show and tell sessions with core finance users consistently generate strong engagement and positive feedback. This matters because buy-in from the finance team is one of the most critical success factors in any EPM project. Reduced vendor dependency. Your team owns the reporting layer. This is crucial as it allows buy-in from the client and allows them to develop their own forms and reports for reporting. It means that us as the implementation partners didn't have to do all the work. But essentially, CPM Express's reusable report templates and finance user accessible design means the client's team can build and maintain disclosure reports independently. The data blending and reconciliation view gives users visibility over what the system is doing, reducing the black box effect that slows adoption in legacy platforms. And lastly, of the slides, rapid user adoption. The polished UI and intuitive forms reduce resistance. Finance teams engage quickly. Trustworthy data load. The validation visibility during data loading builds confidence. Users see what is entering the system and can resolve issues long before they become problems. And lastly, scalable reporting foundation. The reusable components and disclosure-driven templates mean the initial proof of reporting set genuinely extends to the full apps node library. No rebuild required. And now I'm going to go into a real-world example that we recently completed. Okay, so as JP showed briefly, this is one of the screens that you have. You also have the initial dashboard screen, which you saw, which we shall now quickly move to, where you can see various different bits of detail, information, balance sheets, income statements. I'm going to go through one of the workflows we used as an example, showing the various steps and also showing how nice and how easy it is to see where the source data came from, which is massively important in doing these reconciliations. So obviously you have your various months that you'd like to load for your actual data. And so we're going to go to the import trial balance step, stage 1. Obviously step 1 is you go to import and you want to select a file to import. Here you can already see some data because there was a file that had been loaded, but we can easily choose another file. You simply click load and transform. Look for the file here. We're going to load the subsidiary September data. Click OK. And you load the file. Then the data pops up in here and you can see everything that was in the source file, what's been, where it's been allocated and where it's been mapped to comes in the next step, the validate. So in this step, we do a validation and a transformation. So we click and you can also see how quick this is, almost instantaneous. And now we can see where the data has been loaded to. Now we simply push it into the system. Once again, very quick. And now the initial calculations have been done. Then we go into the confirmation step, which JP talked about. And this tells us if there were any critical issues with the data, such as the closing balance is not balancing or trial balance not balancing. You can put in whatever rules you like. In this case, we had basically a closing balance balancing check to make sure that all the closing balances of the balance sheet balance. And then the last step here is to view your data. So in this detail here, we can either choose the balance sheet or the income statement. I'm going to click on the income statement or the balance sheet for now. And then you select a specific item you want. You can pull it as wide or as narrow as you want. And when I click on that item, I can now see, okay, furniture, fittings, and equipment with these two accounts and this total. Quite nice and quite easily visible. I can even go all the way up to non-current assets. So if I click the very bottom there, you can now see that all those accounts make up what my total non-current assets is. Very, very useful for being able to drill from what's in your new EPM system to essentially what's in your general ledger. I could do the same thing for share capital. You can see it's only one account, so not a lot of detail. Equity attributable to shareholders, you can see is quite a bit. I can also do something similar on the income statement. So I can click one line item like that, and you can see it's just a single account. Or I can go all the way down to profit for the year, and you can see that's basically my entire income statement in my trial balance. Very, very useful for us in terms of reconciling to what the client was expecting in their general ledger and to what the client was expecting within OneStream CPM Express and what it had in its old system. It was also quite useful in finding if there were minor differences. Once you're done with the data load, you can obviously click complete workflow, and that then completes the step. You can now see it's ticked there. And now we can go on to the next stage. In this case, it's completing detail for various intercompany transactions. So if we click this one, you can see it's asking us here that there's a movement, there's an opening balance, a closing balance, there's been a slight change. We now need to go and put the detail in for that movement. It's a very simple click. All we do is click there. And in this case, you can see that this one has gone down by 11 million. So it's most likely an impairment. So we simply put minus 511, 71892. One too many numbers. So let's take that out. And you save. And then you click calculate. And you can see straight away that check's gone down to naught. There's no value left there. So we fully disclosed what our movement was for that specific line item. Very, very easy input. And for the reviewers, they can now see what users have put for each little item here, because you can actually add a data attachment for each cell. So they can give a verification as to why that item moved. Again, very, very useful for the overall financial process. Once we're done with each of those items, we can click complete form, and then you complete that one. And you can do that for all of them, and then eventually complete your workflow. As JP also mentioned, once you've done all of that sort of detail, you can then finally click your input and adjustments, and then you get your final amount of detail for each individual entity. Once that's done, we can then have a higher level look. So this is now the reporting layer and the pre-configured and pre-built detail. As you can see, you have quite a few options here. You have financial results, intercompany, validate data, data entry, and commentary. For the intercompany, all it does is simply show you what intercompany transactions you have, show you what's matched, and show you what's unmatched. Again, very, very useful for trying to reconcile intercompany transactions between companies or between companies and associates. For the financial results, we can now select something like a balance sheet or comprehensive income. We can either choose a summary one or a detailed one. I'm going to do a summary level. And here you can see we now choose the entity we want to look at, the consolidation level we want to look at, and the period we want to look at. And it then shows us the information we've asked for. So in this case, what we're doing is we're doing a current month comparison to the prior year, month 12 comparison. We could also do a 12-month comparison, or we could do an actual versus current scenario, depending on whatever scenario you selected as current. You have all these various different options that you can do. And as you saw there, as soon as I selected that, it immediately changed the view. This was also very, very useful in terms of quick time to delivery, because these were all already built, and also in terms of reporting and flexibility in terms of what you report. In this case, you can see I'm showing the subsidiaries data. We could also choose an associate. And with the associate, we can then choose to go through all the various levels in terms of the consolidation process. So in this case, I'm choosing the local to consolidated column set. And what that then shows us is what is the data that is loaded. So you can see local loaded. Then what are the adjustments? Then what is the translated data? So you can see the data gets translated from local to another currency. And then what data is consolidated? So this is what comes in the share, shareholders' equity, and top. So in this case, you can see there's all this TB level data, which gets put into one account, investment in joint venture equity entities, because this is equity accounted. And then that gets consolidated all the way to the very, very top. All of this information was very, very useful in terms of our whole entire consolidation process, and it greatly improved or accelerated our time to delivery. There is so much more I could demonstrate on this, but then we'd be here for hours. So that's really the main detail. The final little step I'm going to do is just to show how easy it is to run a consolidation. So you click there, you click what level you want to consolidate. We choose the group we want to consolidate. And then it quickly shows us here what the consolidation stages are. So you can see some are okay because they've run, some aren't okay. And then we click Run Consolidate. This then runs in the background. And you'll see there's a process that starts over here. So you can see it says Consolidate. And you can see it's almost done. Now it's completed. And now you can see our consolidation process for all 3 of those months is done. And that's how quick and easy it is to actually consolidate. I hope you can see how useful this kind of information would be in a financial reporting process. That's all the detail I have for you today in terms of that. Now we are going to, does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Brian and JP and Simon, for your insight. There's one takeaway we'd like you to leave with. It's that finance transformation can start delivering value much sooner than many organizations expect. We've had already some questions in advance, so I'll run through those first. The first question, does CPM Express limit future design or customization? I think, JP, perhaps you could address that question.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. No, so to answer your question, no, CPM Express does not limit your future design nor customization. I mean, ultimately, you won't need to be customizing. You utilize the capabilities within OneStream to configure the requirements that are relevant to you. So you're starting with those pre-built components, whether it be for consolidation, planning, forecasting, or reporting, and then you can extend or tailor the solution, to meet those later phase requirements, without constraining your future design. Thank you.
Thanks, JP. I'm glad to hear that there are no limitations. The next question, what are the main prerequisites in terms of data integration and team availability for a CPM Express IFRS deployment in 8 to 12 weeks? I think, Brian, can you take this one?
All right. For a quick CPM Express implementation like that, you need a few key points on all of those. For data, it needs to be relatively clean without too many crazy funnies that have to be discovered. There can be a few, but not too many. For integration, we try to limit it for the initial phase of the implementation to a maximum of 2 integrations. Generally a flat file integration and then 1 direct integration. And in terms of team availability, they need to be readily and fully available for the whole entire design and implementation process and need to be engaged with the design team. That helps in terms of building the reports and getting them to what they want and also testing them. And in terms of reconciling the data so that it matches what they're expecting as their final result.
Thanks, Brian. So I think it seems a combined team is the ultimate way to go. And how can CPM Express easily extend as the needs of your organization grow? Simon, perhaps you can answer this one.
Yes, sure, Nicole. Yeah, it can easily extend as your organization grows. I think one of the key advantages of CPMX is that it's not a separate product that needs to be replaced later. It's actually built on the same unified OneStream platform that's used by all global customers of OneStream. So this allows organizations to start quickly and expand at their own pace.
Great, thanks, Simon. I'm glad that it's all seems to be part of the one UI platform. So I think that's all we have time for today. So thank you all for your questions and your participation. We do appreciate your time and engagement, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you all and enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much, everybody.